Greetings, welcome back to Disenthrall. I will be Patrick Smith. I have not made much content recently. I've been busy doing that capitalism thing, and maybe I can talk more about that in another video. But a bunch of people have asked me to comment on several recent events, all involving people I know. But it's on intellectual property. And so I wanted to get this out there and then get back to work. So first of all, full disclosure, we're going to be talking about Eric July doing some copyright takedowns, I believe, though not sure. I think he had some tweets containing some images from the comic books that he sells, the wildly successful comic book series, which I happen to have one of right here. There we go. I saw him. I think he did some copyright takedowns to Twitter and maybe YouTube for people that were posting images of the pages in his comic book. And people were asking me to comment on that, and I briefly tried to engage with him on Twitter around it. But, you know, he's a busy guy. He's running a successful comic book company right now, so I don't necessarily fault him for not dropping everything and having a conversation with me, public or private. Then I was like, okay, I don't really want to make a video just on this. I'm really busy myself. So I put out this poll that you see on the screen on Twitter. Just kind of trying to get people's opinions on this. I have spent a lot of time over the past couple of years on this channel criticizing other libertarians, other libertarian ideas, other philosophies that are in our sphere of thought. And honestly, I'm tired of criticizing libertarians. I want to get back to the roots of this channel where we criticize the statists and the philosophies that lead us to be subjugated to the government. I want to do that again for a little while. So when this topic came up, I was like, okay, is this really important? Is this necessary? So I did this Twitter poll, and the people have given me a pretty clear response. And you know what? They're right. We can do both. We can walk and chew gum. We can criticize when we think one of our own gets it wrong. In fact, it's really important that we do so that we figure out our ideas, as long as we do it constructively. And it's also good that we don't let ourselves become obsessed with only internal critique. We also need to get out in the world and talk to other people about their even more wrong ideas. So it is with that I decided to think about doing a video on this for the Eric July thing. Then a bunch of people started messaging me recently, talking about how Larkin did DMCA takedowns on YouTube and Odyssey around his new movie, The Jones Plantation. And okay, so full disclosure, Eric July, lives near me. He's a great guy. Larkin is one of my great friends. I recently hiked up a mountain with him and went camping, and we had a great time, and I consider him a dear friend. Stefan Kinsella, I've talked to him at length multiple times, had him on the show many times. He's a great thinker. I respect his mind in a lot of libertarian legal theory areas. Full disclosure, I've pretty much got relationships with everybody involved that I'm about to talk about. And so one side of my brain wants to point that out, full disclosure. The other side of my brain is like, well, hold on. I have the friends that I do because I trust them to critique me when they think I've gotten something wrong or done something wrong. So I need to do that. But do I need to do it publicly? No, not really. But I don't know. We're all in this talking head business lately, and a bunch of people have asked for my opinions. And I've already talked to everyone involved about this stuff and given them my opinions. And so I wanted to share it here with you. And yeah, so there it is. And so half of me is like, if this were somebody I didn't know, if this were a normal statist, I'd probably be pretty freaking rude about it. I'd be pretty rough on him. And then I'm thinking like, well, I'm not going to lose my mind over, Larkin doing this stuff. And I'm like, well, hold on, that's inconsistent, Patrick. You need to be just as rough on maybe even more rough on people that you care about. Anyway, enough boring details about the insanity that goes on my brain when talking about this stuff. let's get to it. Larkin has put out, I don't know, a 30-minute video talking about what happened, which you're welcome to watch. Stefan Kinsella recently put out a series of a 3-part video series, I think like 2.5 hours, breaking down his thoughts and responding and fisking, as he would say, Larkin's thoughts on this. I'm going to make this hopefully much shorter and very pointed on the only major point of disagreement and one point of frustration in these conversations. So let's start with the point of major disagreement. A lot of the things Larkin said in the video, I agree with. I think he got right. Some of the stuff in his video, I think, were poorly described. Trying to talk through the ethics of property rights and homesteading from a position of self-ownership. It probably could have been done better, but good Lord, like every single video I've ever made, I look at afterwards, I'm like, oh, that's cringe. I could have done that better. So whatever. A lot of that stuff is not worth spending your time listening to me talk about. The point of disagreement, and this is not just from Eric, though I did get it from him on Twitter. This is not just from Larkin, though this was his major counter argument in his video, but I've gotten it from a lot of other people as well. The argument goes like this. Users who upload stuff to platforms like YouTube and Odyssey and Twitter, when they create accounts on these websites, they are signing user agreements. They are agreeing to terms and conditions to not use this property, this YouTube property, in a certain amount of ways. And you are not allowed to upload copyrighted content to YouTube, and you agree to those terms and conditions when you create your account. And so when you upload unauthorized copyrighted material to YouTube, you are breaking the agreement for use of the YouTube property. And so when the copyright owner, be it Eric or Larkin or anybody else, goes to YouTube or Twitter and says, hey, you have this user that's uploading content that I hold the copyright to, and they're doing it without my permission. And YouTube says, oh, I see. And then they delete that content and, potentially ban the user or do the copyright takedown or whatever. The DMCA copyright process on YouTube. The people have been saying the argument is that that's okay, because all you're doing is telling these platforms about a user who's breaking their agreement, the thing that you voluntarily agreed to when you signed up to the platform. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with nudging YouTube and being like, hey, this user's breaking the rules. This is wrong for one major reason. And then there's a couple little digressions that we can get off onto that are worth the time a lot less. But the main point of wrongness is that DMCA takedowns are literally standing behind and pointing guns of government at several people through the copyright court process. You're pointing the guns at the platform, and you're pointing guns at you're at very least threatening to point guns at the platform and the user uploading the copyrighted material. This is not at all equivalent to nudging YouTube and being like, hey, that user you have over there is breaking your rules. This is so far from that. We can describe exactly how far it is from that. The government has this Digital Millennium Copyright Act, and inside of it, there are provisions for protections for platforms, as long as they respect copyright takedown, DMCA copyright notices. If they don't respect these things, if they ignore them and they don't enforce and they don't acquiesce to the government guns pointed at them around copyright, they lose their DMCA protections. Protections from what, you might ask? Being sued in government court as a co-conspirator. That's probably the wrong legal term for it. You're basically co-liable You become a secondary, I forgot what the legal word is now. This is Kinsella's bag, not mine. But you basically can be prosecuted or can be sued as a co-conspirator in the copyright infringement case. The penalties are not small, and especially if you're a platform that potentially hosts, millions and billions of pieces of potentially copyrighted work. I think it's $100,000 per infringement, a lengthy court process, lots of lawyers, jail time is not off the table. And if you resist literally any of that, an actual death threat is not off the table. This is not fun and games. This is not nudging somebody to tattle on a rule breaker. This is enacting, starting the ball rolling on a major system of control that is not voluntary. There are guns behind it, deadly guns, deadly threats of force. And those threats are pointed at the platforms in question, as well as the uploaders. So there is a set of victims in play here behind a DMCA takedown. That is aggressive, coercive behavior to issue a DMCA takedown. You are pointing the government guns at these platforms. And then, so if we're going to get off on some digressions, we could say, okay, but YouTube, it's a bunch of commies. They all actually believe in intellectual property. And even if the government wasn't forcing them, on threat of this DMCA stuff, they would probably still make rules on their platform that would prevent you from uploading copyrighted material. And they own that property and they have the right to make rules for their property, whatever dumb rules they want. They can say that you're only allowed to upload property that you recorded naked with a clown nose on. And that would be perfectly valid. And if somebody did that without being naked with a clown nose on, somebody could tell them, and YouTube would be fully justified in removing those people from their platform, removing their content from their platform. Yes, that's probably the case. And the commies at YouTube would probably be those people that might try and implement some of those rules. However, it's immaterial because I'm very sure that none of the people we're talking about, none of the libertarians involved, just sent an email to a generic support address at the company or contacted somebody on the inside and just literally said, hey, those people are uploading stuff that they don't have the copyright on. I'm positive that the DMCA process was utilized. So if you wanted to sort of respect the company, the platform's consent for how they use their property, and you wanted to see if they actually cared about these copyright rules or not, that would be the way you would do it. You would do it without the guns being involved. But even then, it's questionable if you informing them through a generic means would have to be construed as some sort of takedown notification. So it gets messy. The way to illustrate that even stronger would be to look at other platforms that we know aren't into copyright. They are libertarian or even anarchist. And we have several examples of that. We'll say Odyssey. They're, libertarian led, not intellectual property advocates. At least I'm pretty sure on the library side behind Odyssey. I haven't actually gotten the leadership of Odyssey's opinion on this, but we can assume that they are only instituting these copyright rules defensively against the threat of government. And we can, be relatively sure that if we nudged one of them and didn't go through the DMCA process, that they would be like, well, that's copyright, which isn't valid. So, we don't care. Another example would be Float, may it rest in peace, a social media company. I know, literally, the only reason copyright was in the house rules for that website was because of the reasons I've been talking about. Had it not been for those government guns in play, that rule wouldn't have existed, and we would have summarily ignored, takedown requests, polite nudges. Hey, that person uploaded something that they didn't have the copyright on. So what? Intellectual property is not a valid form of property. So pound sand, I guess. So those are examples, and we know that Odyssey at least was on the receiving end of a DMCA. So that even more restricted version of the argument still applies. It's still government guns involved. It's not okay. And even if it were YouTube that would probably consent to it, it's still not okay. The only counter super nerdy defense I could put together for YouTube would be Google and YouTube goes around the world, and they are not afraid and they are not shy to use the intellectual property laws and guns of government on other people to get what they want and to control other people when it comes to what they consider their intellectual property. And so in my mind, that kind of, I no longer really care about Google and YouTube's being subjected to DMCA. I don't really care or consider them a victim because they use the same thing to victimize other people. But even with that side argument, you still have the uploader who is being threatened with actual 6-figure plus potential jail time damages for these infringements. That's not okay. Okay, so hopefully I've made that clear. That is the sort of moral philosophy evaluation of the situation when it comes to DMCA copyright takedown requests for content. Now, I want to draw a big bright line down the center of this video, and I want to say, now that we're done talking about what I would consider the objective side of the discussion, now I want to talk about the subjective, feels-based opinion side of the discussion, which I care a lot less about. I don't like spending time arguing over opinions and feelings because everybody has them. Okay, you're allowed to have an opinion. You're allowed to not agree with me. You're allowed to passionately hate my choice of favorite Metallica album, and I'm allowed to passionately disagree that with your opinion that the new Star Trek movies are Star Trek. We're allowed to disagree. It's fine. I'm allowed to think people are disgusting individuals or paragons of virtue, and we're allowed to disagree on those evaluations. And there's a big confluence of mixing the objective side of this discussion about what is right and what is wrong and what is initiation of force and coercion and what is not, and the evaluations of people's behavior. Great example behind this, like Eric July. I think he calls the people gay that share his comic book content. Larkin calls people poopy heads when they share freedom content, reducing the ability of the creator of the content to profit from it. He calls that poopy-headed behavior. And Stefan Kinsella, for example, says the opposite. He says people that paywall freedom content are the actual poopy heads, because what about the poor people in other countries that might not be able to afford it? Do you not want them to learn about freedom? These are all opinions. This is all like a subjective feeling about the actions involved. This is not morality. This is not moral philosophy. This is not anything objective in terms of the actions involved with the property involved. And so I care even less to really talk about this, except just to point out that that's what's happening, where a lot of people are arguing about this stuff. My position, my feels-based opinion, that you should consider about as strongly as, my opinion on the best Metallica album, is that I mean, when I heard that they had already uploaded Larkin's movie to YouTube and Odyssey, I'm like, you shit-headed, feckless, high time preference fucking morons can't even give Larkin a week to make some money on his freedom movie before sharing it. I find that disgusting. I find that disgraceful. I would not be friends with somebody who thought that that was okay. We got Larkin out here who has given away 99% of his time, effort, and content, and he's created 2 things which he has paywalled. Candles in the Dark and It might be more than two things, but I'm pretty sure like a very, very small percentage of the stuff that he's created, he's paywalled. Now we have this movie that took 6 figures of money to create. They're trying to get it on the indie movie circuit so that it might actually have a chance of blowing up. And we can't even go a week. we can't even give him a week to try and have a runway on it. Much less the probably 6 months to a year that would probably be what he would need to really get out of it. What he would need to get out of it to get it far enough down the indie movie track to make it blow up. Or, God forbid, make back the 6 figures it took them to make it. No, we gotta fuck that up immediately. Great job, guys. You fucking morons. Yeah, so that irritates me. I don't like those people's actions, and I'm not afraid to call them names. But those names are my opinions. And those are my feelings and how I would handle my associations with people behind it. Those are not moral evaluations. Those are not things that I can attack people over. Those are not me calling for somebody to be controlled. At maximum, you could say that I'm calling for people to be ostracized over undermining a freedom content creator's attempts to monetize his work for even a couple days before it's ruined. So that was the second point I wanted to make. So we've got the objective side, we've got the opinion side, learn how to tell the difference, afford people the space to have other subjective opinions, but we should call out people, even if they're our friends, even if we have good relationships with them, when we think that they're actually doing something aggressive or coercive. And so that's where we are. We're all still going to be friends after this. I'm looking forward to hanging out with Larkin again very soon. I think he's going to be staying at my house, and I'm sure we'll talk about this, and we'll have a great time talking about it, and we'll probably learn something, and it'll be awesome. And we don't need to just set fire to everyone instantly the first moment this stuff happens. We can talk through it. We can be grown-ups. We can disagree. Except for those shit-headed, feckless, high time preference fucking morons. No, I'm just kidding. All right, guys. I'm going to get back to capitalism and trying to launch a company. I apologize for the dearth of content recently. I will be working on getting back at it. I keep going back and forth between... I don't think the world has a really good source of news commentary from a libertarian perspective yet. I would love for that not to be me, but if I have to be the one, then okay, I'm down for that. I wish it could be profitable, but it just isn't. People are used to not paying for that kind of stuff, so that makes it difficult. You need a support crew and people to really monetize that stuff and to produce it quickly enough. But I'm not opposed to trying, and so we might give that a shot. Some kind of daily sort of shitstorm of the day commentary, like we're used to seeing from other sources, except that where we actually give decent evaluations from a moral libertarian perspective on them. So those are my current thoughts. But my priority right now is doing capitalism and launching this company, which we can talk more about later. All right. So have a great guy. Have a great guy. Oh my God. You've been disenthralled. I said it. I did the thing.